China has made advancements in hypersonic missiles with nuclear capabilities. The outcomes of the tests raise questions about how far China has modernized its military and if the U.S. has fallen far behind. Nicolas Chaillan is former Chief Software Officer of the Air Force. Nick, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I want to start with artificial intelligence. The Army's CIO has said that the U.S. has better AI technology than China. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I think it's very short-sighted. I think what the mistake we see being made is we compare the U.S. companies' capabilities with the ones of China. And quite honestly, the U.S. companies are leading in AI and machine learning, but we do not have access to most of these capabilities in the war-fighting sense. So effectively, there is a massive wall between the U.S. government and the U.S. companies where, of course, China has the luxury to mandate their companies to work with them, effectively getting full access to all of their data, but also of the entire capabilities around AI with self-driving cars, vision capabilities, and effectively that helps them lead faster and move faster and deploy capabilities at a much faster pace as well.
So, Nick, are you saying that right now, currently, the U.S. is behind China technologically in artificial intelligence?
Yes, the U.S. government is definitely behind the Chinese government when it comes to adoption and deployment of AI and cybersecurity across the government. It's certainly a very big existential threat when it comes to the nation and our kids, and that's why I think it's so important we wake up now before it is too late. I'm just tired of seeing reports after reports saying we have more time, and we see China catching up and keep calling China a near-peer adversary. We're already in many fields that will matter, and the one probably that will matter the most for the next battles will be already being led by China for the next 10 to 15 years.
So the director of DoD's Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, the JAIC, has said that he wants to field AI slowly and incrementally. And you commented that, quote, Pentagon leaders continue to put our nation and kids at risk because of continued incompetence and lack of urgency. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what's the biggest gap we see in the U.S. government right now, when you compare to what's being done on the commercial side, is a lack of training and investment in our people. Effectively, the fact that we still do not use basic Agile principles that have been created 22 years ago. When I started my company, I was 15 back in France and was implementing Agile to be able to move at the pace of relevance. But yet, you see, again, what we end up having is leaders that really want to do the right thing, and they are good people, right? But they just do not understand how being agile works. They think if you're going to move too fast, you're going to fall down and not be able to stand back up and keep the fight. Where really effectively the only answer is to move fast and incrementally and continuously deliver value and be able to demonstrate what sticks and what doesn't work. And really that's the way, companies like SpaceX are able to innovate. And that's why you see now that thanks to them, we can finally stop using Russia as a capability to send American astronauts to the International Space Station, which was a disgrace for years. And that's only because of innovative companies that are embracing concepts around DevSecOps and Agile as a foundation to what they do.
So, Nick, let's talk about specific recommendations then for maintaining superiority in AI and other technologies. Clearly the Defense Department isn't going to become a commercial industry overnight. It's very large, and it goes deliberately and slowly. So specific recommendations then for maintaining that kind of technological superiority.
Well, the first step is really to start investing in our people and really empower our warfighter at the lowest level. We see a lot of great talent already in the department. They're just not empowered to succeed. So we really want to end up prioritizing this Agile training as a foundation so we can actually understand what it takes to move at the pace of relevance and do small incremental delivery of value. We also need to stop creating joint teams, right? So I think having a cloud and the DevSecOps, a zero trust, joint team, AI team, reporting to DevSecDef, and having the ability to bring the best talent from all services and stop the reinventing the wheel when you see, programs like JetC2 that are trying to do this disjoint all domain command and control capability, where really at the end of the day, all the three services are building their things in a vacuum with ABMS, Overmatch, and Project Convergence. All you end up seeing is waste of taxpayer money and more compounded problems to then integrate all these disparate systems and compounding the cybersecurity risk and threats by having to deal with all these redundant capabilities. The fact that we don't have a single cloud capability, and we've seen, so-called Pentagon leaders for over 3 years talk about JEDI, which ended up being nothing but a whole bunch of lawsuits, and no one is held accountable. I even hear JEDI being used sometimes as a success story by the former Defense Digital Service leaders, which is completely mind-boggling to me that we would even dare to think of this as a success story.
Nick, you spent 3 years in your position and you've had a lot of successes that you're proud of. Why not stay and try to make changes from within?
Well, first of all, we demonstrated that a small group of people can actually achieve great outcomes in the behemoth that is the DoD. So we have a lot of hope. We were able to put, best of breed capabilities, open source, and AI machine learning capabilities on the U-2 jet and fly the jet and receive over-the-air updates while flying the jet without impacting the airworthiness of the aircraft, and showing that AI can actually bring tremendous value to the pilots while flying the jet. We also saw that when you put AI capabilities on jet and you have the best US pilots, every single time the pilots ended up losing against the AI. So that's very concerning as well. And so at some point I was raising the same problems again and again, and I wasn't seeing any sense of urgency. At best, I was seeing more and more reports coming out saying we have more and more time, which I just knew was not actually true, because AI compounds upon itself, and the more data you get and the faster you move, the harder it's going to be to catch up. And you're competing against a nation with 1.5 billion people, so you're going to run out of time very quickly. In fact, we estimate that by December 2022, we will be out of time and we will not be able to technically catch up. Only because of the velocity and the volume of data we're talking about, it's going to be very difficult for us to then take a stand. And so I thought, I'm running out of time. Our kids are running out of time. I'm talking about the same problems every day. It's better for me to keep the fight, continue the fight from the outside, and raise awareness. And honestly, because we overclassify everything in the department, we have a tough time explaining this to most of the US companies, so they would be proactively willing to come and help us.
Well, I want to ask you about that, Nick, because as part of your LinkedIn post announcing your departure, you say this, quote, "The DoD should stop pretending they want industry folks to come and help if they are not going to let them do the work." What do you mean not let them do the work?
Well, it's just easy to say we're going to bring people from the outside to make change, and we've seen the same thing when we send people to do tools at Google, and then they see all the fancy stuff that the Google of the world are doing, and then they come back even more frustrated because they can't implement any changes to improve the system, and you're pretty much stuck in the same status quo, and people even end up leaving even faster because of frustration. And it's kind of what I've been seeing is you bring people like me in the department with actual experience running these concepts and bringing them to life in a tangible manner, and we're doers, we're not talkers, and we want to go ahead and do things, and we're wasting time first trying to find dimes compared to the size of the DoD's budget. Some of the stuff that frustrated me the most was the JADC2 minimal viable product that the Joint Staff asked me to build, which was effectively a 20 million cost to completely drastically improve the way we communicate and share data with NATO and Five Eye. And unfortunately, we allegedly couldn't find 20 million in the department to make this happen, which was supposedly the most important mission that the Secretary of Defense wanted to push. When you look at the 750 or 60 billion budgets of the department, it's obviously ridiculous. It's a rounding error. And when you keep putting people like me in situations like this, where we just want to move and stop talking and do it, and I'm being asked to do it in 4 months, and then we end up telling me 2 months in, hey, just kidding, we can find the money. This is just something that's very frustrating.
Nick, I want to ask you about cyber defense, because you did mention that in your post as well, and obviously we're seeing more breaches happening. How are we doing in that area, and what are your recommendations?
So I think the cyber defense side, both of DHS with critical infrastructure end of DoD is really at the kindergarten level, and I mean it. I think when you compare it to what I know and what we do on the commercial side, I've been pushing zero trust 5 years ago at DHS, all to hear the DHS leaders say it was too early and that they didn't want to do it. Now, of course, it's been mandated in the latest President Cyber Executive Order. So again, that tells you a little bit of the velocity of the government, right? You're pretty much lagging at least 5 years behind. And that used to be okay, but now with the pace of IT, you don't have that luxury anymore. And I would allege that many of the cyber breaches you've seen in the last 5 years involving the oil pipeline and the water facilities and the power facilities would have been prevented with zero trust. And so for leaders to say no at the time was borderline criminal. And now, you see the DoD implementing zero trust, finally trying to do that. I pushed zero trust, of course, when I started in the department, built the largest implementation of zero trust with Platform One in DoD. We have all that capability ready to go, but yet we see, again, DoD CIO and DISA start a complete brand new bid to implement zero trust in the department, starting from scratch instead of reusing the great work that the Space Force and the Air Force have put together in zero trust, which is, again, the largest implementation in the government. And yet, that's not reused whatsoever. We keep letting egos and silos get in the way of common sense.
I want to ask you about the supply chain, because I do know that some of our chips come from China. What needs to happen so that DoD has a secure supply chain?
Yeah, and the state of the supply chain is also very worrisome, right? And you mentioned China, but the rest of the chips are coming from Taiwan. So that tells you that why Taiwan is so important as well to this discussion. And again, how do you lead in AI if you do not have access to best of breed chips? Again, it's all about compute powers. So what you end up seeing is now a complete dependency on pretty much everything around us, from drones to chips to pretty much everything around medicine and everything we need to prosper. And that's very concerning. We need to proactively invest and bring this back into the US. We need to have the US companies start building this back into the US. And by the way, it's not just a hardware supply chain risk, it's a software supply chain risk as well, because China could easily inject time bombs where the software will be triggered at a specific event to completely kill the system. And so we know this exists. We know this is an actual capability that exists out there, and we need to proactively address this issue. Right now, it's at the state where we're completely dependent to those supply chain issues, both in terms of just basic disruption that we've seen with COVID, but also what happens if we get into a deeper fight? What's going to happen there?
Nick, I just want to close with, we've talked about a lot of things that maybe need work and need improvement. What's the one thing that you're most concerned about with regards to China?
Well, I think it's the lack of urgency and complacency. The simple fact that we keep calling them near-peer adversary, and we just use great excuses after excuses to say, hey, yeah, they're catching up. They're getting closer. They're getting closer. Even when they're leading, we keep dismissing it, saying, well, they're kind of leading, but not already. We still have a little bit of time. I don't know why we're even comfortable with them getting closer to us. We should be so far ahead. We should be, just like Tesla, right? Tesla is completely fine open sourcing their patents because they're moving so fast. They have access to great talent. They don't care. They can just give it away and still be 5 miles ahead every single time. And that's the way the U.S. government should be. And by the way, when you look at the budget we're spending, I would argue we end up getting about 10 cents on the dollar of return on investment. The waste of bureaucracy and just plain siloed work and ineffective work is massive. And honestly, no one is held accountable, right? We're just going to classify the outcome. No one is going to know about it. And so we think we're spending a lot of money, but I would argue China is probably end up spending more money based on effectiveness of that spending. And that's very concerning to me because people keep using the money argument where when I look at how much things cost on the commercial side, what would cost, $50K costs $500,000 in the US government.
All right, well, Nick, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective with us.
Thanks for having me.